notes when Renee was speaking to us before. I'm going to talk about identity as I share some of my personal story. Please reflect on your own background and your own journey. I grew up in a very white Dunedin in the 1970s and 80s. We upheld traditional Chinese values and culture. We lived next door to our grandparents, spent a lot of time with cousins and the Chinese community, most of who I was related to in some way. Spent a lot of time socialising together, eating, playing mahjong. But I had a very Kiwi upbringing, riding horses, playing at the beach, going to the park. I played a lot of sport at school. I've been fortunate to have had the best of both worlds. My upbringing is shared by many New Zealand-born Chinese of my generation. We were always the minority, keep our heads down, working hard. Our parents and our grandparents sacrificed a lot for us. And I'm part of the generation that went to university to get a good education. My own son, a huge contrast, went to a very multicultural primary school here in Auckland. White was a minority. As a 5-year-old, he came home after the first week of school and he asked his father and me if he was Tongan. My children are teenagers now, but they seem to be lumped into this ethnic group called Asians. And I go to great lengths to remind them that they're Chinese, they're not Asian. Asian is a huge grouping of very different people and cultures. Asian people themselves know how different they all are from each other. We shouldn't be stereotyped into this concept called Asian. People have different skills and backgrounds, no matter what their skin colour, and they offer diversity and benefits. Professor Spoonley was beamed in to talk to us about the Asianisation of Aotearoa. The New Zealand Herald reported last month that 7 of the 10 most common surnames for new births in Auckland last year were of Asian origin. The Singhs, the Lees, the Wongs, they make the top 10 list. These children will have a different experience to me growing up. Maybe they'll feel part of a minor majority rather than a minority. But like me, these kids will grow up being Kiwi with an Asian heritage. And they might not know it now, but it will be a huge asset for them. It's this blend that is critical. We all know that Kiwis, when they go overseas on their OE, they generally have a pretty positive reputation. They've got a good work ethic and a really good can-do attitude. And coming from a small country like New Zealand, we have a generalist approach. We're not pigeonholed as defined and narrow specialists. And that's a huge help when you're away from home working in large corporates. Kiwis are independent and staunch. You combine this Kiwi attitude with an Asian heritage where education and respect is highly valued, and you've got a very powerful combination. I'm in the apparel business, trading with both China and Bangladesh. When I go to China, I'm considered a foreigner. I'm the outsider. One of my experiences might make you laugh. It was a very proud moment for me. I was with one of my northern Chinese suppliers who speaks Putonghua, and we were in a hotel restaurant in Guangzhou. So he speaks Putonghua, can't speak Cantonese. So in my very best Cantonese, I asked for an English menu. And I was absolutely elated when they brought out the menu and they handed it to my guest. I felt very, very Chinese at the moment. Business-wise, the environment is constantly changing. There is official policy and laws, but you need to know the unwritten rules. Because just when you think you know how something works in China, something changes and throws it all out the window. Companies do not work the same way that you might be used to in New Zealand. Our idea of business logic isn't necessarily followed in China. The Kiwi upfront, direct, to-the-point way of doing things isn't always the best approach. I don't think you can read a book or study China or go on a training course. Corporates may think that you can do that. Send some people to China for a couple of visits and they'll be right. Everyone talks about how important relationship and trust is. It's one thing to read about it, and it's another to innately understand it and to experience it. My great-great-grandfather, Choi Sukhoi, came to New Zealand in 1869. He, and the generations between us, have always valued our Chinese heritage and kept our culture strong, proudly. Choy Sui Hoi's bones was on the SS Fentanyl that Renee talked about. And earlier this year, my family and I, along with a lot of the local community, went up to Hokianga to pay our respects and do chingu. I'm considered different to Pākehā here in New Zealand, but I'm also considered quite different to the locals in China. I am a blend of those two worlds. I inherently know the Kiwi way of doing business and what we expect, but trading with China for the last 14 years, I understand the differences in the business world over there, while still sharing some of the fundamental values as my trading partners. When I was younger, I didn't appreciate being Chinese as much as I should have. But now being older, a little bit more wiser, I embrace my culture. For me, my ethnicity is Chinese, but I'm proud to be a Kiwi. And like most of you in this room, I've always been a minority. And as a minority, we fight to be heard. We strive harder to be better. And in some ways, we work harder just to be seen as equal. I have the same values as my dad. He taught me about hard work, perseverance, honour, trust, fairness, respect, and relationships, all for the long term. It's not a short game, and that takes patience. I may execute in a different way to my dad because I'm a different generation, but the fundamental values don't change, and those are Chinese values. So in summary, avoid the stereotypes. Good business is driven by good people who understand others and who understand themselves. So know who you are, be passionate about New Zealand, be proud of your cultural identity, and stand up and be kind.